A millionaire finds a poor boy sleeping in his garden. He decides to take him to live in his mansion. But one day he decides to come home early to surprise the boy. The millionaire is completely shocked by what the boy did to his disabled wife. The sprawling estate of Ellington Manor stood as a testament to wealth and opulence in the heart of New York's affluent Westchester County. Its manicured lawns and meticulously maintained gardens were a stark contrast to the world beyond its wrought iron gates. On a chilly autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the manor's owner, Robert Ellington, found himself facing an unexpected dilemma. Robert, a self-made millionaire in his early 50s, had just returned from a grueling board meeting. His Tesla glided silently up the long driveway, the gravel crunching beneath its tires. As he approached the main entrance, something caught his eye. A small hunched figure curled up beneath one of the ornate rose bushes that lined the walkway. Curiosity piqued, Robert stepped out of his car and cautiously approached. To his astonishment, he found a young boy no older than 10 fast asleep on the damp grass. The child's clothes were tattered and dirty, his shoes worn through at the soles. A small threadbare backpack served as his pillow. Robert's heart clenched at the sight. In all his years of philanthropy and charitable giving, he had never encountered such stark poverty on his own doorstep. For a moment, he stood frozen, unsure of how to proceed. Should he call the authorities? Wake the boy and send him on his way? As he deliberated, the boy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Startled by Robert's looming presence, he scrambled backward, fear evident in his wide brown eyes. "It's all right," Robert said softly, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not going to hurt you. What's your name, son?" The boy hesitated, his gaze darting between Robert and the gate as if calculating his chances of escape. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he replied, "Sam. My name is Sam." Robert crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with the boy. "Hello, Sam, I'm Robert. Can you tell me why you're sleeping in my garden?" Sam's lower lip trembled, and he hugged his knees to his chest. I don't have anywhere else to go. Please don't call the police. I promise I'll leave right away." The desperation in Sam's voice struck a chord within Robert. He thought of his own childhood, of the struggles his parents had faced to provide for him and his siblings. He had vowed long ago that if he ever had the means, he would help those in need. Now, faced with this child's plight, he knew he couldn't simply turn away. "How about we go inside and get you something to eat?" Robert offered, his voice gentle. "It's getting cold out here, and I bet you're hungry." Sam's eyes widened with a mix of hope and suspicion. "Really? You'd do that?" Robert nodded, standing up and extending his hand. "Really, come on. Let's get you warmed up." Hesitantly, Sam took Robert's hand and allowed himself to be led towards the imposing front doors of Ellington Manor. As they entered, the stark contrast between Sam's disheveled appearance and the opulent interior was jarring. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors and priceless artworks. Sam gaped in awe, his eyes roving over every luxurious detail. "Robert, is that you?" A woman's voice called from deeper within the house. "Yes, dear," Robert replied, "and we have a guest." Moments later, a wheelchair glided into view carrying Robert's wife, Elizabeth. Her elegantly coiffed silver hair and designer outfit were a stark contrast to Sam's ragged appearance. Her eyes widened in surprise as she took in the scene before her. "Robert, what's going on? Who is this?" Elizabeth's voice was tinged with confusion and a hint of disapproval. Before Robert could respond, Sam shrunk back, clearly intimidated by Elizabeth's presence. Robert placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Elizabeth, this is Sam. I found him sleeping in our garden. He needs our help," Robert explained, his tone brooking no argument. Elizabeth's brow furrowed, her lips pursing into a thin line. It was clear she had reservations about this unexpected turn of events. However, years of marriage had taught her to read her husband's determination, and she knew that once Robert set his mind to something, there was little use in opposing him. "I see," she said finally, her voice carefully neutral. "Well, I suppose the first order of business is to get him cleaned up and fed. Maria," she called, summoning their housekeeper. As Maria appeared and was given instructions to prepare a bath and a meal for Sam, Robert couldn't help but notice the boy's wide-eyed wonder at his surroundings. There was something in Sam's expression, a mix of awe, gratitude, and tentative hope, that tugged at Robert's heartstrings. In that moment, as he watched Sam being gently led away by Maria, Robert made a decision that would change all their lives forever. He didn't know the boy's story yet, didn't know what circumstances had led him to seek shelter in a stranger's garden. But he knew with a certainty that surprised even himself that he wanted to help this child, not just for tonight, but for as long as Sam needed. Little did Robert know that this impulsive act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge his marriage, his business, and everything he thought he knew about family and love. As he turned to face his wife's questioning gaze, he couldn't have imagined the trials and triumphs that lay ahead, or how this chance encounter would transform not just Sam's life, but his own as well. The stage was set for a journey of redemption, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family, one that would test the bonds of love and loyalty in ways none of them could have foreseen. The following morning, Sam awoke in a state of disbelief. Gone was the hard, cold ground he had grown accustomed to. In its place was a soft, warm bed that seemed to envelop him like a cloud. For a moment, he lay still, eyes closed, afraid that if he opened them, he would find it had all been a dream. Slowly, Sam's eyelids fluttered open, and he gasped. The room around him was larger than any he had ever seen, decorated in soft blues and creams. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a world so different from the one he knew that it might as well have been another planet. A gentle knock at the door startled him. "Come in," Sam called out hesitantly, his voice barely above a whisper. The door opened to reveal Maria, the housekeeper he had met the night before. Her kind face broke into a warm smile as she saw Sam sitting up in bed. "Good morning, young sir," she said cheerfully. "Mr. Ellington asked me to bring you some breakfast and to let you know that he'd like to speak with you when you're ready." Sam nodded, still somewhat dazed by his surroundings. As Maria set a tray laden with more food than Sam had seen in months on the bedside table, he couldn't help but ask, Is this real? Am I really here?" Maria's eyes softened with understanding. "Yes, dear. This is very real. Mr. Ellington has a big heart and he wants to help you. Now eat up and get dressed. There are some clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you." As Maria left, Sam turned his attention to the breakfast before him. Pancakes, eggs, fresh fruit, and a tall glass of orange juice. It was a feast fit for a king in Sam's eyes. He ate slowly, savoring every bite, still half expecting to wake up at any moment. After breakfast, Sam found a set of clothes that fit him perfectly in the wardrobe. As he dressed, he couldn't help but marvel at how soft and clean they felt against his skin. It had been so long since he had worn anything but his old, tattered clothes. With a deep breath to steady his nerves, Sam made his way out of the room and down the grand staircase. He found Robert in a study lined with bookshelves that stretched from floor to ceiling. The millionaire was seated behind a large mahogany desk, but he stood as Sam entered the room. "Good morning, Sam," Robert greeted him warmly. "I hope you slept well. Please have a seat." Sam perched on the edge of a leather armchair, his posture tense. "Thank you, sir, for everything. I don't know how to repay you." Robert waved away Sam's words. "There's no need for repayment, Sam. What I'd like is to understand your situation better. Can you tell me how you ended up in my garden last night?" Sam's hands twisted in his lap as he began to speak. His story unfolded slowly at first, then in a rush of words. He told Robert about losing his parents in a car accident 2 years ago, about being bounced from one foster home to another, each worse than the last. He spoke of his decision to run away, of the months he'd spent on the streets, scrounging for food and seeking shelter wherever he could find it. As Sam spoke, Robert listened intently, his heart heavy with the weight of the boy's experiences. When Sam finished, silence fell over the study. Robert leaned forward, his elbows on his desk, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Sam," he said finally, "I want to help you, not just for a night or two, but in a more permanent way. Would you be willing to stay here with us for a while?" Sam's eyes widened in disbelief. "Stay here? But why would you want me to stay?" Robert's expression softened. "Because every child deserves a safe place to call home, Sam. And while I can't replace what you've lost, I can offer you safety, education, and a chance at a better future." Tears welled up in Sam's eyes, and he nodded, unable to speak. Robert stood and walked around the desk, placing a gentle hand on Sam's shoulder. Good, he said. Now let's go find Elizabeth and share the news. They found Elizabeth in the sunroom, her wheelchair positioned near a large window overlooking the gardens. As Robert explained his decision to Elizabeth, Sam couldn't help but notice the mix of emotions that flitted across her face: surprise, uncertainty, and something that looked almost like fear. "Robert," Elizabeth said, her voice tight, "can I speak with you privately for a moment?" As Robert and Elizabeth moved to a corner of the room, Sam pretended to be engrossed in a potted plant, but he couldn't help overhearing snippets of their hushed conversation. "Are you thinking, we can't just take in a strange child? Needs our help, Elizabeth. I won't turn my back on him. What about our reputation? What will people say?" "Don't care what people say, it's the right thing to do." Finally, Elizabeth's shoulders sagged in resignation. She wheeled herself back to Sam, her expression carefully composed. "Well, Sam," she said, her voice carrying a forced cheerfulness, "it seems you'll be staying with us for a while. I hope you'll be comfortable here." Sam nodded, offering a tentative smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Ellington. I promise I won't be any trouble." As Robert began to outline plans for Sam's stay, enrolling him in school, arranging for a tutor to help him catch up, setting up a trust fund for his future, Sam felt a warmth blooming in his chest. For the first time in years, he dared to hope for a better future. But even as he basked in Robert's kindness, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that Elizabeth's acceptance was fragile at best. He resolved to do everything in his power to prove himself worthy of the chance he'd been given, unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. As the day progressed, Sam explored the vast manor, each new discovery filling him with wonder. The library, with its thousands of books, captured his imagination like nothing else. As he ran his fingers along the spines of countless volumes, a spark ignited within him. A thirst for knowledge, a desire to learn and grow. Robert, noticing Sam's fascination with the library, felt a surge of pride and hope. He saw in Sam not just a child in need, but a bright young mind eager to flourish. It strengthened his resolve to provide Sam with every opportunity to succeed. That night, as Sam lay in his new bed, surrounded by luxury he had never dreamed of, he made a silent vow. He would repay the Ellingtons' kindness, not just with gratitude, but with determination. He would study hard, learn everything he could, and one day, he hoped, make them proud. Little did Sam know that his presence in the Ellington household would set in motion a series of events that would challenge and change them all. As he drifted off to sleep, the first seeds of transformation were already beginning to take root in the hearts and minds of those around him. As the days turned into weeks, Sam's presence began to subtly alter the rhythm of life at Ellington Manor. The grand house, once filled with a somber silence punctuated only by the whir of Elizabeth's wheelchair and the muffled conversations of staff, now echoed with the tentative sounds of a child's laughter and eager footsteps. Robert found himself looking forward to evenings spent in the library with Sam, the boy's insatiable curiosity, a breath of fresh air in his often staid world of business deals and board meetings. He watched with growing pride as Sam devoured book after book, his reading skills improving rapidly under the guidance of Miss Thompson, the tutor Robert had hired. One evening, as they sat in the library, Sam looked up from a hefty tome on world history, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Mr. Ellington," he began hesitantly, "I was wondering, could you tell me more about what you do? Your work, I mean." Robert's eyes lit up at the question. He launched into an explanation of his various business ventures, simplifying complex concepts for Sam's benefit. To his delight, Sam listened with rapt attention, asking insightful questions that belied his young age. "You know, Sam," Robert said, leaning back in his leather armchair, "I started with nothing. My parents worked hard, but we never had much. I put myself through college, worked odd jobs, saved every penny. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to succeed." Sam's eyes widened. "Really? But you have so much now. How did you do it?" Robert smiled, a mix of pride and nostalgia in his expression. "Hard work, certainly, but also education. Knowledge is power, Sam. That's why I'm so pleased to see how much you love learning. With an education, you can go anywhere, be anyone you want to be." As Sam absorbed these words, a seed of ambition began to take root in his young mind. He looked around at the opulent surroundings, then back at Robert, seeing him in a new light. Here was a man who had risen from humble beginnings to create all this. For the first time, Sam began to envision a future for himself beyond mere survival. "Mr. Ellington," Sam said, his voice filled with determination, "I want to learn everything. I want to be successful like you someday. Do you think I could?" Robert's heart swelled with emotion. He reached out and placed a gentle hand on Sam's shoulder. "Sam, I believe you can do anything you set your mind to, and I'll be here to help you every step of the way." As touching as these moments were, not everyone in the household shared Robert's enthusiasm for Sam's presence. Elizabeth, in particular, remained distant and wary. Her interactions with Sam were polite but cool, her smiles never quite reaching her eyes. One afternoon, as Sam was helping Maria in the kitchen, a task he had taken upon himself in an effort to feel useful, he overheard a heated conversation between Robert and Elizabeth in the adjacent dining room. "Robert, I understand your desire to help the boy, but have you really thought this through?" Elizabeth's voice was strained. "We know nothing about his background. What if he has problems? What if he's dangerous?" "Elizabeth, please," Robert replied, his tone a mix of exasperation and disappointment. "Sam is a child, not a criminal. He's been nothing but respectful and eager to learn since he arrived. How can you still harbor such suspicions?" "It's not just about Sam," Elizabeth continued. "What about us? Our friends are starting to ask questions. The Hawthorns cancelled their dinner plans with us last week. People are talking, Robert." Sam's heart sank as he listened. He had been so focused on proving himself to Robert that he hadn't fully considered how his presence might be affecting the Ellingtons' social standing. A familiar feeling of unworthiness began to creep in, threatening to overshadow the hope he had begun to nurture. But Robert's next words pushed back against Sam's doubts. "Let them talk," he said firmly. "If our so-called friends can't understand or support our decision to help a child in need, then perhaps they weren't really our friends to begin with. Sam stays, Elizabeth. That's final." The conversation ended abruptly, and Sam quickly busied himself with the dishes as Elizabeth wheeled past the kitchen, her face a mask of barely contained frustration. As she passed, her eyes met Sam's for a brief moment. In that instant, Sam saw something in her gaze that he couldn't quite define, a mixture of resentment, fear, and something else. Something almost like longing. That night, unable to sleep, Sam crept down to the library. As he ran his fingers along the spines of the books, he made a silent vow. He would work harder than ever to prove himself worthy of Robert's faith in him. He would study, learn, and grow. And somehow, someday, he would find a way to win Elizabeth's approval as well. As Sam pulled a book from the shelf, A Beginner's Guide to Business and Economics, he didn't notice the figure watching him from the shadows of the hallway. Elizabeth sat in her wheelchair, observing the boy's determination with a conflicted heart. Part of her wanted to wheel into the library, to offer guidance or perhaps even comfort. But the larger part, the part shaped by years of social expectations and fears, held her back. She retreated silently to her room, leaving Sam to his late-night studies. As she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Elizabeth couldn't shake the image of the small boy in the vast library, reaching for knowledge with such earnest determination. Despite her reservations, a tiny crack appeared in the wall she had built around her heart. Meanwhile, in his study, Robert sat at his desk, poring over legal documents. The papers before him detailed the process of legal guardianship, a step he was considering taking to secure Sam's place in their home. As he read, his resolve strengthened. He would protect this boy, give him every opportunity to succeed, regardless of the social consequences. What none of them realized was that forces beyond the walls of Ellington Manor were already taking notice of the changed dynamics within. The ripples of their decisions were spreading outward, destined to return as waves that would test the foundations of the life they were building. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the inhabitants of Ellington Manor slept, each lost in their own thoughts and dreams. Sam, finally asleep in the library armchair, a book on his lap. Elizabeth, tossing restlessly in her bed, her mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. And Robert, slumped over his desk, surrounded by the paperwork that represented his commitment to Sam's future. The day ahead would bring new challenges, new opportunities for growth, and the first hints of the storms that were gathering on the horizon. But for now, in the quiet hours of the early morning, a fragile peace settled over the grand house, as delicate and full of potential as the first buds of spring. As autumn gave way to winter, the grounds of Ellington Manor transformed into a winter wonderland. Snow blanketed the once manicured lawns, and icicles hung like crystal chandeliers from the eaves of the grand house. For Sam, who had never experienced such luxury during the cold months, it was nothing short of magical. One crisp December morning, Sam stood at the window of his room, watching the groundskeepers clear the driveway of fresh snow. The sight of their efficient work sparked an idea in his mind. Hurrying downstairs, he found Robert in his study, poring over some documents. "Mr. Ellington," Sam began, slightly out of breath from his rush, "I was wondering if I could help the groundskeepers with the snow. I used to shovel sidewalks for spare change before I came here." Robert looked up, surprise and warmth mingling in his expression. "That's very thoughtful of you, Sam, but you don't need to do that. We have staff for those tasks." Sam's face fell slightly, but he pressed on. "I know, sir, but I want to help. I want to contribute somehow. Please." Robert studied the boy for a moment, seeing the earnest desire to be useful shining in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. "All right, Sam, if it means that much to you, you can help. But bundle up warm and don't overdo it." Sam's face lit up with a grin. "Thank you, Mr. Ellington. I promise I'll be careful." As Sam hurried off to don his winter gear, Robert couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. The boy's work ethic and desire to contribute were admirable traits, ones that reminded Robert of his own youth. Outside, Sam threw himself into the task with gusto. The groundskeepers, initially skeptical of the young boy's presence, soon found themselves impressed by his determination and skill. Sam worked tirelessly, his cheeks rosy from the cold and exertion, a sense of satisfaction growing with each cleared patch of driveway. From her position at the bay window in the sitting room, Elizabeth observed Sam's industrious efforts. She watched as he laughed with the groundskeepers, his joy evident even from a distance. For a brief moment, a small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, but it quickly faded as she heard the approaching whir of Robert's electric wheelchair. "He's quite something, isn't he?" Robert said as he came to a stop beside her, his gaze fixed on Sam outside. Elizabeth's response was non-committal. "He certainly seems eager to please." Robert turned to look at his wife, a hint of frustration in his voice. "Elizabeth, when are you going to give the boy a chance? It's been months. He's done nothing but try to fit in, to help where he can. What more do you want from him?" Elizabeth's jaw tightened, her hands gripping the armrests of her wheelchair. "What I want, Robert, is for things to go back to the way they were. Before you brought a stranger into our home, before our friends started whispering behind our backs, before—" She trailed off, but the unspoken words hung heavy in the air between them. Before the accident that had left her wheelchair-bound, before the dreams of the family they had planned to have had been shattered. Robert's expression softened. He reached out, placing a hand gently on Elizabeth's shoulder. "I know this isn't what we planned, my dear, but life rarely goes according to plan. Sam needs us, and I think maybe we need him too." Elizabeth didn't respond, her gaze fixed once more on the boy outside. As she watched, Sam lost his footing on a patch of ice, stumbling and falling into a snowbank. For a heart-stopping moment, Elizabeth felt an unexpected surge of concern. But then Sam emerged, laughing, his face covered in snow, and the moment passed. Later that afternoon, as Sam was warming up in the kitchen with a mug of hot chocolate, the doorbell rang. Maria answered it, and soon the sound of raised voices filled the foyer. Curious, Sam crept to the kitchen door, peering out into the hallway. There, standing in the entrance, was a man Sam had never seen before. He was tall and imposing, with steel-grey hair and a crisp suit that screamed wealth and influence. His face was twisted in barely contained anger as he addressed Robert. "This has gone on long enough, Robert," the man was saying, his voice low and threatening. "You can't seriously be considering making that street urchin a permanent part of your household. Have you lost your mind?" Robert's response was calm but firm. "Charles, I've told you before. My decision to help Sam is final. He's staying, and that's that." The man, Charles, scoffed. "And what about your reputation? What about the family name? You're risking everything for some random child you found in your garden. It's madness." "The only madness," Robert replied, his voice rising slightly, "is turning our backs on a child in need. Sam stays, Charles, and if you can't accept that, then perhaps it's best you leave." Charles's face reddened with fury. "This isn't over, Robert. You're making a grave mistake, and I won't stand by and watch you destroy everything we've built. If you won't see reason, I'll be forced to take matters into my own hands." With that ominous declaration, Charles turned on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The echo reverberated through the grand foyer, seeming to shake the very foundations of Ellington Manor. Sam, his heart pounding, retreated back into the kitchen. His mind raced with questions. Who was that man? Why was he so angry about Sam's presence? And what did he mean by taking matters into his own hands? As Sam grappled with these new worries, he failed to notice Elizabeth wheeling silently past the kitchen door. She had overheard the entire confrontation, and her expression was a complex mix of emotions: concern, fear, and a hint of something that might have been resolve. That night, as a winter storm raged outside, the inhabitants of Ellington Manor retired to their rooms, each lost in their own thoughts. Sam lay awake, the man's angry words replaying in his mind. Robert sat in his study, poring over legal documents, more determined than ever to secure Sam's future. And Elizabeth, in a moment of rare vulnerability, found herself wheeling to Sam's door, her hand poised to knock, only to falter at the last moment and retreat to her own room. As the wind howled and snow pelted against the windows, the tensions that had been simmering beneath the surface of life at Ellington Manor threatened to boil over. The confrontation with Charles had shattered the fragile peace, setting in motion events that would test the bonds forming between Sam and the Ellingtons and force each of them to confront their deepest fears and most closely held beliefs. In the dark of night, as the storm raged on, the future of Ellington Manor and its inhabitants hung in the balance, as precarious as a snowflake on the wind. The days following Charles's confrontation at Ellington Manor were tense. Robert spent long hours in his study, fielding calls and poring over documents. Sam, acutely aware of the disruption he had caused, tried to make himself as unobtrusive as possible, throwing himself into his studies with renewed vigor. It was during one of these study sessions in the library that an unexpected interaction occurred. Sam was deeply engrossed in a book about world geography when the soft whir of an electric wheelchair caught his attention. He looked up to see Elizabeth entering the room, her face an unreadable mask. "Mrs. Ellington," Sam said, quickly standing up. "I'm sorry, I can leave if you need the space." Elizabeth waved away his offer. "No, stay, I actually came to talk to you." Sam's eyebrows shot up in surprise. In all the months he had been at Ellington Manor, Elizabeth had never sought him out for a conversation. He sat back down, his posture tense, as Elizabeth wheeled closer. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy and awkward. Then Elizabeth spoke, her voice softer than Sam had ever heard it. "That book you're reading, it was one of my favorites when I was your age." Sam glanced down at the book in his hands, then back at Elizabeth. "Really? I didn't know you liked geography." A ghost of a smile flickered across Elizabeth's face. "Oh yes, before my accident, I loved to travel. Robert and I had plans to see the world together." As she spoke, Elizabeth's eyes took on a faraway look, as if seeing beyond the walls of the library to distant horizons. Sam, emboldened by this unexpected openness, ventured a question. "What was your favorite place that you visited?" Elizabeth's face lit up with a warmth Sam had never seen before. "Oh, that's a difficult choice. But I think it would have to be Kyoto, Japan. The cherry blossoms in spring, the ancient temples, the way tradition and modernity coexist. It was magical." As Elizabeth began to describe her travels, Sam listened with rapt attention. For the first time, he saw beyond the stern, disapproving facade to the person beneath, a woman who had once been full of adventure and dreams, now trapped not just by her wheelchair, but by her own fears and resentments. Their conversation flowed more easily than either of them could have anticipated. Elizabeth found herself sharing stories of her travels, her eyes sparkling with remembered joy. Sam, in turn, shared his own dreams of seeing the world someday, his enthusiasm infectious. As their impromptu geography lesson came to an end, Elizabeth hesitated, then said, "Sam, I want you to know that I'm sorry for how I've treated you. It wasn't fair of me to judge you without giving you a chance." Sam's heart swelled with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "Thank you, Mrs. Ellington. I understand, and I'm sorry too for disrupting your life. I never meant to cause any trouble." Elizabeth shook her head. "No, Sam. You have nothing to apologize for. The trouble, as you put it, was here long before you arrived. Perhaps your presence is forcing us to confront things we've been avoiding for too long." As Elizabeth wheeled out of the library, leaving Sam to his studies, neither of them noticed Robert standing in the shadows of the doorway. He had overheard their entire conversation, and his eyes glistened with unshed tears. For the first time in years, he had seen a glimpse of the Elizabeth he had fallen in love with, the vibrant, passionate woman who had been buried beneath years of pain and resentment. Later that evening, as Sam was getting ready for bed, a soft knock came at his door. He opened it to find Robert standing there, a small package in his hands. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, Sam," Robert said. "I have something for you." Sam invited Robert in, curiosity piqued. Robert handed him the package, which Sam carefully unwrapped. Inside was a beautifully bound journal, its cover embossed with a world map. "Elizabeth mentioned your interest in geography," Robert explained. "I thought you might like this to record your own travels someday, and your thoughts in the meantime." Sam ran his fingers over the soft leather of the journal, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Thank you, Mr. Ellington. It's beautiful." Robert smiled, placing a hand on Sam's shoulder. "You're welcome, son, and I want you to know how proud I am of you. Your presence here has brought about changes I never expected, but that I now see we desperately needed." As Robert left, Sam sat on his bed, clutching the journal to his chest. For the first time since arriving at Ellington Manor, he felt truly accepted, not just by Robert but by Elizabeth as well. The road ahead might still be uncertain, but in that moment, Sam allowed himself to hope for a future brighter than he had ever dared to dream. Outside Sam's room, Robert paused, his hand still on the doorknob. The sound of Elizabeth's wheelchair approaching made him turn. "How is he?" Elizabeth asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Robert smiled. "He's good." "Elizabeth, I overheard your conversation with Sam in the library. Thank you for giving him a chance." Elizabeth's eyes met Robert's, a mix of emotions swirling in their depths. I think maybe it's time I gave myself a chance too. Robert, I've been so angry for so long." But seeing Sam, his resilience, his hope, it's made me realize how much I've been holding on to the past. Robert knelt down beside Elizabeth's wheelchair, taking her hands in his. "My dear, it's never too late for a new beginning, for any of us." As they sat there in the dimly lit hallway, hands clasped, a sense of possibility seemed to fill the air. The challenges ahead were still daunting. Charles's threats loomed large, and years of pain and misunderstanding couldn't be erased in a single day. But for the first time in years, the inhabitants of Ellington Manor faced the future not as individuals trapped in their own struggles, but as a unit, bound together by unexpected connections and newfound understanding. In his room, Sam opened his new journal to the first blank page. With a steady hand, he began to write, recording not just his hopes for the future, but his gratitude for the present, for second chances, for unexpected kindness, and for the first stirrings of what felt like family. As winter deepened its hold on Ellington Manor, the newfound warmth within its walls seemed to defy the chill outside. Sam, Elizabeth, and Robert had settled into a tentative harmony, their days filled with shared meals, impromptu geography lessons, and quiet evenings by the fireplace. However, the spectre of Charles's threats loomed large, casting a long shadow over their fragile peace. One particularly frosty morning, Sam awoke to find the manor in a state of unusual activity. Maids scurried about, polishing silver and arranging flowers, while the chef barked orders in the kitchen. Confused, Sam made his way to the dining room, where he found Robert and Elizabeth in deep conversation. "Good morning," Sam said hesitantly, sensing the tension in the air. "Is everything all right?" Robert and Elizabeth exchanged a glance before Robert spoke. "Sam, we're having some important guests for dinner tonight, old friends of the family." Elizabeth's lips tightened into a thin line. "The Hawthorns," she added, her voice carrying a note of apprehension. "They've been curious about our situation here." Sam's heart sank. He knew without being told that he was the situation in question. "Should I make myself scarce?" he asked, hating how small his voice sounded. "Absolutely not," Robert said firmly. "You're part of this household now, Sam. The Hawthorns will just have to accept that." Elizabeth nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "Just be yourself, Sam. That's all we ask." As Sam helped with the preparations for the dinner, his mind raced with worries. Who were the Hawthorns? Were they anything like Charles? Would they try to convince Robert and Elizabeth to send him away? The answer came that evening as the doorbell chimed, echoing through the manor. Sam, dressed in his best clothes, freshly tailored at Robert's insistence, stood nervously at the top of the grand staircase as the front door opened to admit the guests. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorn were an imposing couple. He was tall and distinguished, with a neatly trimmed salt-and-pepper beard, while she was elegantly dressed, her pearls gleaming in the soft light of the foyer. But it was the young girl with them who caught Sam's attention. About his age, with bright red hair and a smattering of freckles across her nose, she looked as uncomfortable as Sam felt. "Robert, Elizabeth," Mr. Hawthorn boomed, his voice filling the space. "It's been far too long." As pleasantries were exchanged, Sam slowly made his way down the stairs. The girl's eyes met his, and she offered a small, sympathetic smile. "And this must be Sam," Mrs. Hawthorn said, her gaze sharp as it landed on him. "We've heard so much about you." Sam swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorn. This is our daughter, Emily," Mr. Hawthorn added, gently pushing the red-haired girl forward. "Hi," Emily said softly, her cheeks coloring slightly. As they moved to the dining room, Sam couldn't help but feel like a specimen under a microscope. The adults' conversation flowed around him, punctuated by pointed questions about his background and his presence at Ellington Manor. "It's just so unconventional," Mrs. Hawthorn remarked, her tone carefully neutral. "I mean taking in a child off the streets. Weren't you concerned about the risks?" Before Robert could respond, Elizabeth surprised everyone by speaking up. "The only risk," she said firmly, "would have been turning our backs on a child in need. Sam has been nothing but a blessing to this household." Sam's heart swelled with gratitude at Elizabeth's words. Under the table, he felt a gentle nudge against his foot. Looking up, he met Emily's eyes. She gave him an encouraging smile, as if to say, "Hang in there." As the evening progressed, Sam found himself relaxing slightly. Emily turned out to be a kindred spirit, sharing his love of books and travel. They whispered quietly about their favorite stories and dream destinations, finding common ground amidst the adults' more serious conversations. It wasn't until dessert was served that the true purpose of the Hawthorns' visit became clear. "Robert," Mr. Hawthorn began, setting down his fork, "we need to discuss Charles." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Robert's jaw tightened. "What about Charles?" Mr. Hawthorn sighed. "He's making waves, Robert, talking to the board members, spreading rumors. He's convinced that your decision to take in Sam is evidence of diminished capacity." "That's ridiculous," Robert snapped, his voice sharp. "We know that," Mrs. Hawthorn interjected smoothly. "But perception is everything in our circles, Robert. You know that." Sam felt his chest tighten, guilt and fear washing over him in equal measure. He was the cause of all this trouble, all because Robert and Elizabeth had shown him kindness. Sensing his distress, Emily reached under the table and gave his hand a quick, reassuring squeeze. The simple gesture of solidarity helped ground Sam, reminding him that not everyone saw him as a problem to be solved. Elizabeth's voice cut through the tension. "And what do you think?" she asked the Hawthorns, her tone challenging. "Now that you've met Sam, do you agree with Charles?" The Hawthorns exchanged a look. It was Mr. Hawthorn who finally spoke. "Honestly, we came here tonight prepared to side with Charles, but seeing you all together, seeing how Sam fits into your lives, it's clear to us that Charles is wrong. The boy is polite, well-spoken, and clearly devoted to both of you," Mrs. Hawthorn added. "Whatever your reasons for taking him in, it's evident that it was the right decision." Relief washed over Sam, so intense that he felt dizzy with it. Robert reached out, placing a hand on Sam's shoulder, while Elizabeth's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Thank you," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your support means more than you know." As the evening drew to a close, Sam found himself on the front steps with Emily, watching as their parents said their goodbyes. "I'm glad I met you," Emily said softly. "Don't let the grown-ups and their silly politics get you down, okay? You belong here." Sam nodded, a lump in his throat. "Thanks, Emily." "I'm glad I met you too." As the Hawthorns' car disappeared down the driveway, Sam turned to find Robert and Elizabeth watching him with warm smiles. "You did wonderfully tonight, Sam," Elizabeth said, reaching out to straighten his collar affectionately. Robert nodded in agreement. "We're proud of you, son. And we want you to know that no matter what Charles or anyone else says, your place is here with us." As they made their way back into the warmth of the manor, Sam felt a sense of belonging wash over him. The road ahead might still be uncertain, but for the first time he truly believed that he had found a home and a family at Ellington Manor. Little did they know that Charles, seething with anger at the Hawthorns' change of heart, was already plotting his next move. The battle for Sam's future, and for the soul of Ellington Manor, was far from over. As January gave way to February, life at Ellington Manor settled into a new rhythm. Sam's presence had become an integral part of the household, his eager curiosity and kind heart bringing a renewed sense of purpose to both Robert and Elizabeth. However, the peace they had found was about to be shattered. One blustery afternoon, as Sam sat in the library working on his studies, the sound of raised voices drifted through the manor. Curiosity piqued, he quietly made his way towards Robert's study where the commotion seemed to originate. "You have no right, Charles," Robert's voice thundered, uncharacteristically angry. "No right at all." "I have every right, Robert," came the cool reply. Sam recognized the voice as belonging to Charles, the man who had threatened to take matters into his own hands. "As a member of the board and your brother-in-law, I have a responsibility to protect this family's interests." Sam's breath caught in his throat. Brother-in-law? He hadn't known Charles was related to the Ellingtons. And how exactly is trying to remove Sam from our care protecting anyone's interests? Elizabeth's voice joined the fray, sharp with indignation. There was a rustling of papers, and Charles spoke again, his tone smug. "I've petitioned the court for a competency hearing, Robert. Your decision to take in a street urchin to risk everything we've built for some misguided act of charity. It calls into question your ability to manage not just your personal affairs, but the company as well." Sam's world tilted on its axis. A competency hearing. Could they really take Robert's company away from him? And all because of him? "This is absurd," Robert growled. "You won't get away with this, Charles." "Oh, but I think I will," Charles replied. "The hearing is set for next month. I suggest you start considering your options, Robert. Send the boy back where he came from or risk losing everything." Unable to listen any longer, Sam retreated to his room, his mind reeling. He had known his presence was causing tension, but he had never imagined it could lead to this. As he sat on his bed, staring blankly at the wall, a soft knock came at his door. "Sam?" It was Elizabeth. "May I come in?" Sam opened the door, his face pale and drawn. Elizabeth wheeled herself into the room, her expression gentle but concerned. "You heard, didn't you?" she asked softly. Sam nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Ellington. I never meant to cause so much trouble. Maybe it would be better if I left." "Samuel James Ellington," Elizabeth said firmly, causing Sam to look up in surprise at the use of the full name they had given him. "Don't you dare think of leaving. You are a part of this family now, and we Ellingtons stick together." Tears welled up in Sam's eyes. "But Mr. Ellington could lose everything because of me." Elizabeth reached out, taking Sam's hand in hers. "Listen to me, Sam. Robert and I have faced challenges before, and we'll face this one too, together, with you." Just then, Robert appeared in the doorway, his face etched with worry but his eyes determined. "Elizabeth's right, Sam. We're not giving up without a fight." As they sat together in Sam's room, Robert and Elizabeth explained the situation. Charles, it turned out, had always been jealous of Robert's success. He had married Elizabeth's sister, Amanda, hoping to gain a foothold in the family business. But Robert's acumen and integrity had seen him rise to the top. while Charles remained on the sidelines, bitter and resentful. "He's using you as an excuse, Sam," Robert explained, "but this fight has been brewing for years." Sam listened, his young mind grappling with the complexities of adult conflicts. "What can we do?" he asked finally. Robert smiled, a glimmer of his usual confidence returning. "We fight, Sam. We show the court and anyone else who needs to see it that you belong here, that you're not a charity case or a bad decision, but a valuable member of this family." Over the next few weeks, Ellington Manor became a hive of activity. Lawyers came and went, poring over documents and preparing their case. The Hawthorns visited frequently, offering their support and helping to rally other influential families to the Ellingtons' cause. Sam threw himself into his studies with renewed vigor, determined to prove his worth. He excelled in his lessons, impressing his tutors and even helping to tutor some of the younger children in the neighborhood. One evening, as Sam was helping Elizabeth in the garden, a task that had become their special time together, she turned to him with a serious expression. "Sam, there's something I need to tell you," she began. "Something about my past and why Charles's actions have hit me so hard." Sam listened intently as Elizabeth revealed a part of her history he had never known. Before her accident, she and Robert had been trying to have a child, but complications arose and they were told it would be impossible. The accident that left her in a wheelchair had come just weeks after this devastating news. "When Robert brought you home that night," Elizabeth said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, "I was terrified. Not of you, but of opening my heart again, of loving a child only to lose them. But Sam, you've shown me that love isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace no matter the risks." Sam moved beyond words, leaned in and hugged Elizabeth tightly. In that moment, under the fading light of the setting sun, surrounded by the flowers they had nurtured together, Sam truly felt like he had found his mother. As the date of the hearing approached, tension mounted at Ellington Manor. But along with the anxiety came a steely determination. Robert, Elizabeth and Sam faced the challenge not as individuals, but as a united family. The night before the hearing, they gathered in the library, each lost in their own thoughts. Sam, looking at Robert and Elizabeth, felt a surge of love and gratitude. Whatever happened tomorrow, he knew that he had found his true home. "No matter what happens," Robert said, breaking the silence, "we face it together. As a family." Elizabeth nodded, reaching out to hold both Robert's and Sam's hands. "As a family," she echoed. Sam squeezed their hands, his voice strong and clear as he added, "As a family." As they sat there, united in their resolve, none of them could have predicted the shocking revelations and unexpected allies that awaited them at the hearing. The battle for Sam's future, and for the very soul of the Ellington family, was about to reach its climax. The morning of the hearing dawned cold and grey, as if the weather itself was reflecting the somber mood at Ellington Manor. Sam stood before the mirror in his room, adjusting his tie with trembling hands. He had never worn a suit before, and the unfamiliar fabric felt stiff and constraining. A gentle knock at the door preceded Elizabeth's entrance. She wheeled into the room, her own attire impeccable as always. "Here, let me help you with that," she said softly, reaching up to straighten Sam's tie. As she worked, she met his eyes in the mirror. "Remember, Sam, no matter what happens today, you are an Ellington. Hold your head high." Sam nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I will, Mom," he said, the words slipping out naturally. Elizabeth's eyes widened for a moment, then softened with emotion. Downstairs, they found Robert waiting by the front door, his face a mask of determination. "Ready?" he asked, looking at his family. "Ready?" Sam and Elizabeth replied in unison. The ride to the courthouse was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. As they pulled up to the imposing building, Sam's heart raced. This was it, the moment that would decide his future. Inside, the courtroom was already buzzing with activity. Sam recognized several faces: the Hawthorns, some of Robert's business associates, and of course Charles sitting at the plaintiff's table with a smug expression. As the hearing began, Charles's lawyer presented their case. He painted a picture of Robert as a man whose judgment had been compromised by grief and guilt, leading him to make rash decisions that put both his family and his company at risk. Mr. Ellington's decision to bring an unknown child into his home, to offer him access to sensitive business information, and to consider him as a potential heir to the Ellington fortune is not just ill-advised, the lawyer argued. It's a clear sign of diminished capacity. Sam felt sick to his stomach. Is that how people saw him, as a threat, a mistake? But then it was the Ellingtons' turn. Their lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Patel, stood up. "Your Honor," she began, "the opposition would have you believe that compassion is a sign of weakness, that opening one's heart and home to a child in need is an act of madness. We intend to prove not only that Mr. Ellington's decision was sound, but that it has brought immeasurable positive change to the Ellington household and to young Sam's life." Over the next few hours, a parade of witnesses took the stand. Teachers and tutors testified to Sam's intelligence and work ethic. The Hawthorns spoke of the positive influence Sam had on their own daughter, Emily. Even some of the household staff came forward, describing how Sam had breathed new life into Ellington Manor. But the most powerful testimony came from Elizabeth. As she wheeled to the front of the courtroom, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. "Your Honor," Elizabeth began, her voice clear and strong, "I must confess that when Robert first brought Sam home, I was afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of opening my heart. But Sam—" She paused, her eyes finding the boy in the crowd. "Sam taught me that it's never too late for a second chance. He brought laughter back into our home, purpose back into our lives. He is not a charity case or a flight of fancy. He is our son, in every way that matters." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom as Elizabeth finished her testimony. Even the judge seemed moved. As the hearing neared its end, Robert took the stand. He spoke of his own humble beginnings, of the mentors who had given him a chance, and of his desire to pay that kindness forward. "Sam is not a risk to our family or our business," Robert declared. "He is our future, the future of everything we've built, everything we believe in." Just as it seemed the hearing was wrapping up, there was a commotion at the back of the courtroom. All heads turned to see a woman hurrying down the aisle. Sam's heart stopped. He recognized her immediately, though he hadn't seen her in years. "Your Honor," the woman called out, slightly out of breath. "I have testimony relevant to this case." The judge peered at her over his glasses. "And you are?" "Amanda Hawkins, Your Honor, Charles Hawkins' wife and Sam's birth mother." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Sam felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. His birth mother, here. As Amanda took the stand, she began to unravel a tale that left everyone stunned. She spoke of her troubled past, of giving up Sam for adoption when she was just a teenager. She revealed that Charles had known about Sam all along, had in fact been the one to track him down. "Charles saw Sam as an opportunity," Amanda explained, her voice thick with regret. "He thought if he could control Sam, he could manipulate Robert and gain control of the company. When Robert took Sam in on his own, it ruined Charles's plans." The revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Charles, his face red with fury, leapt to his feet, shouting denials, but the damage was done. As the judge called for order, Sam sat frozen in his seat, his mind reeling. He felt a warm hand on his shoulder and looked up to see Robert standing beside him, with Elizabeth on his other side. "It doesn't change anything," Robert said softly. "You're still our son." Elizabeth nodded in agreement. "We're your family, Sam. Always." As the hearing drew to a close, the judge's decision seemed almost a foregone conclusion. Not only was Robert's competency affirmed, but Charles found himself facing potential criminal charges for his manipulative schemes. Outside the courthouse, as reporters clamored for statements, the Ellingtons huddled together. Sam looked up at Robert and Elizabeth, then over at Amanda, who stood awkwardly to the side. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice small. Robert squeezed his shoulder. "That, my boy, is up to you. We have a lot to talk about, but know this. Whatever you decide, we're here for you. Always." As they made their way through the crowd, heads held high, Sam felt a mix of emotions he couldn't quite name. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in his life, he knew he wouldn't face it alone. He had found his family, his home, and nothing, not even the shocking revelations of the day, could take that away from him. The battle was over, but the journey of the Ellington family was far from finished. As they drove back to the manor, Sam knew that the most important chapters of their story were yet to be written. The days following the hearing were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments for the Ellington family. As they returned to the manor, the weight of recent events hung heavy in the air. Sam, still reeling from the revelation about his birth mother, retreated to his room, seeking solitude to process his tumultuous thoughts. Robert and Elizabeth, sensing Sam's need for space, gave him time while grappling with their own conflicting emotions. The threat to their family had been neutralized, but the unexpected appearance of Amanda had opened a Pandora's box of complications. It was on the third day after the hearing that Sam finally emerged from his self-imposed isolation. He found Robert and Elizabeth in the sunroom, their heads bent close in quiet conversation. They looked up as he entered, their faces a mixture of concern and love. I think I'm ready to talk," Sam said, his voice small but steady. Elizabeth wheeled closer, patting the seat next to her. "Come, sit with us, darling." As Sam settled between them, Robert spoke. "We want you to know that nothing has changed for us, Sam. You are our son, regardless of biology. But we also understand if you have questions, if you want to know more about your birth mother." Sam nodded, his eyes fixed on his hands. "I do have questions, but I'm also scared. What if she wants me back? What if I have to leave?" Elizabeth's hand found Sam's, squeezing gently. "Oh, sweetheart. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. This is your home and we are your family. Nothing will change that unless you want it to." "Your mother's right," Robert added. "But if you do want to get to know Amanda, to understand your history, we'll support you. We can arrange a meeting, set boundaries, whatever you need." Sam looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Can I think about it? I'm not sure what I want yet." "Of course," Elizabeth said, pulling him into a hug. "Take all the time you need." As the days passed, life at Ellington Manor began to settle into a new normal. The media frenzy surrounding the hearing gradually died down, and the family found themselves adjusting to their strengthened bonds. One sunny afternoon, as Sam was helping Elizabeth in the garden, an activity that had become their special bonding time, she broached the subject that had been on everyone's minds. "Sam," she began, her hands busy with a rose bush, "I want you to know that whatever you decide about Amanda, it won't change how I feel about you. You've become the child of my heart and nothing can alter that." Sam paused in his work, looking at Elizabeth with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. Even if I want to meet her?" Elizabeth's smile was gentle. "Even then, darling, life is rarely simple. It's possible to love more than one person, to have connections with different people in different ways. If you want to explore your relationship with Amanda, it doesn't diminish what we have." Emboldened by Elizabeth's words, Sam made a decision. That evening, at dinner, he announced that he was ready to meet Amanda. The meeting was arranged for the following week, in the neutral setting of a quiet cafe in town. As Sam entered, flanked by Robert and Elizabeth, he spotted Amanda immediately. She sat alone at a corner table, her fingers nervously twisting a napkin. "Hello, Sam," she said softly as they approached. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." What followed was a conversation filled with explanations, apologies, and cautious hope. Amanda spoke of her troubled youth, of the impossible decision she had made to give Sam up for adoption, believing it was his best chance at a good life. She explained how Charles had discovered Sam's existence and planned to use him as a pawn in his schemes. "I'm so sorry, Sam," Amanda said, her voice choked with emotion. "I never meant for any of this to happen. When I realized what Charles was doing, I knew I had to come forward to tell the truth." Sam listened, his emotions a turbulent mix of anger, confusion, and a strange sense of relief at finally knowing the truth of his origins. As Amanda spoke, he felt Robert's steadying hand on his shoulder and saw Elizabeth's encouraging nod. "I don't expect forgiveness," Amanda continued, "and I'm not here to disrupt your life. I can see how much the Ellingtons love you, how happy you are with them. I wanted you to know the truth and to tell you that I'm proud of the young man you've become." As the meeting drew to a close, Sam found himself facing a crossroads. Amanda had expressed a desire to have some role in his life if he was willing. It was a lot to process, a decision that would require careful thought. Back at Ellington Manor, as the family sat in the library discussing the meeting, Sam looked at Robert and Elizabeth, the parents who had chosen him, who had fought for him. Then he thought of Amanda, the mother who had given him life and who now sought redemption. "I think," Sam said slowly, "I'd like to get to know Amanda. Not as a replacement for you," he quickly added, looking at Elizabeth, "but as another connection. Is that okay?" Robert and Elizabeth exchanged a glance, then turned to Sam with warm smiles. "Of course it's okay," Robert said. "Family comes in many forms, Sam. We're secure enough in our love for you to welcome more love into your life." As they sat there, discussing the possibilities and challenges ahead, Sam felt a sense of peace settle over him. His family might not look like others, might be more complex and have more moving parts, but it was his. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly, completely whole. Spring arrived at Ellington Manor, bringing with it a sense of renewal and fresh starts. The gardens bloomed under Elizabeth and Sam's careful tending, a vibrant metaphor for the growth and change happening within the family. Sam's relationship with Amanda was developing slowly but steadily. They met regularly for lunch or walks in the park, gradually building a connection that, while different from his bond with the Ellingtons, was meaningful in its own way. Amanda, true to her word, never tried to overstep or replace Robert and Elizabeth's role in Sam's life. Instead, she offered another layer of support and love, enriching Sam's world in unexpected ways. One warm Saturday morning, as Sam helped Robert in his study, organizing some old files, they came across a dusty photo album. As they flipped through it together, Robert shared stories of his own childhood, of the mentors who had believed in him and given him chances to succeed. "You know, Sam," Robert said, a thoughtful look on his face, "finding you that night in our garden, it was like life had come full circle. I was given an opportunity to pay forward the kindness that was shown to me." Sam nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "And now I want to do the same, to help other kids like me." Robert's face lit up with pride. "That's a wonderful idea, son. In fact, I've been thinking along similar lines. What would you say to starting a foundation? We could help underprivileged children, provide educational opportunities, maybe even set up a mentorship program." The idea took root, growing and evolving over the following weeks. The entire family threw themselves into the project with enthusiasm. Elizabeth reached out to her vast network of social connections, drumming up support and donations. Amanda, eager to contribute positively to Sam's life, offered her skills as a social worker to help structure the Foundation's programs. As news of the Ellington Foundation spread, it began to attract attention from unexpected quarters. Emily Hawthorne, Sam's friend from the dinner party months ago, convinced her parents to become major donors. Other families in their social circle, impressed by the Ellingtons' commitment to giving back, began to offer their support as well. The Foundation's first major event was a gala fundraiser held at Ellington Manor. The Grand House, once a symbol of isolation and privilege, was transformed into a bustling hub of philanthropy and community spirit. As Sam stood with his family, Robert, Elizabeth, and Amanda, greeting guests and sharing their vision, he felt a sense of purpose and belonging that went beyond anything he had ever imagined. During a quiet moment in the festivities, Sam found himself in the garden with Elizabeth. They stood and sat together, admiring the roses they had nurtured through the winter. "You know," Elizabeth said, a hint of wonder in her voice, "when Robert first brought you home, I was so afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of opening my heart again. But now, looking at all of this," she gestured to the gala in full swing beyond the garden, "I realize that you didn't just change our lives, Sam. You've changed our entire world." Sam leaned down to hug Elizabeth, words failing to express the depth of his emotions. As they embraced, Robert joined them, wrapping his arms around both. "My family," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "My amazing, world-changing family." As the gala continued inside, the Ellingtons stood together in the garden, united in love and purpose. They had faced challenges, overcome prejudices, and emerged stronger. And now they were poised to make a difference in the lives of countless other children who, like Sam, just needed a chance. The story of the boy in the garden had evolved into something greater than any of them could have imagined. It had become a story of second chances, of chosen family, and of the transformative power of love and acceptance. As Sam looked at Robert and Elizabeth, then over at Amanda chatting with guests near the fountain, he knew that his journey was far from over. But whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the strength and support of his unique, beautiful family. In the warm glow of the garden lights, surrounded by the sweet scent of blooming flowers, the Ellingtons stood at the threshold of a new chapter. The future stretched out before them, full of promise and possibility, ready to be written with the same love, courage, and compassion that had brought them together. As the Ellington Foundation flourished, so did Sam. Now in his early teens, he had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young man, deeply involved in the Foundation's work. However, with adolescence came new challenges, both for Sam and for his unconventional family. One crisp autumn morning, Sam burst into the kitchen, his face flushed with excitement. "Mom, Dad, I got the lead role in the school play." Elizabeth beamed from her wheelchair while Robert clapped Sam on the back. "That's wonderful, son. What's the play?" "It's Oliver Twist," Sam replied, his eyes shining. "I'm playing Oliver." A shadow flickered across Elizabeth's face, quickly replaced by a smile. That's great, Sam. You'll be perfect for the role." As Sam rushed off to call Amanda and share the news, Robert turned to Elizabeth. "What's wrong, dear? You seemed upset for a moment there." Elizabeth sighed, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "It's silly, really. It's just Oliver Twist, a story about an orphan boy finding a new family. It hit a little close to home, I suppose." Robert knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Elizabeth, you know Sam's story with us had a much happier beginning and middle than Oliver Twist. And it certainly has a happier ending." Elizabeth nodded, squeezing Robert's hands. "I know, it's just, sometimes I worry. What if Sam starts to question his place here? What if he decides he wants to live with Amanda full-time? Then we'll face that together," Robert said firmly. "But I don't think we need to worry. Sam knows who his parents are. Amanda has been nothing but supportive of our family dynamic." As the weeks passed and Sam threw himself into rehearsals, the Ellingtons found themselves navigating the complex waters of co-parenting with Amanda. There were moments of tension, disagreements over curfews, study habits, and the balance between Sam's schoolwork and his commitment to the Foundation. One particularly heated discussion arose over Sam's future. As they sat around the dinner table one evening, Amanda broached the subject of college. "I was thinking," she said cautiously, "that Sam might consider applying to my alma mater. They have an excellent social work program." Robert and Elizabeth exchanged glances. "We were actually hoping Sam might be interested in business school," Robert said, "perhaps following in my footsteps at the company." Sam, caught in the middle, looked from one parent to another. Do I have to decide right now? I'm not even sure what I want to do yet." The tension was broken by Elizabeth's gentle laugh. "Of course you don't have to decide now, darling. You have plenty of time to figure out your path." As they continued to discuss Sam's future, it became clear that balancing the expectations and hopes of three parents would be an ongoing challenge. But it was a challenge they were all committed to facing together, for Sam's sake. As Sam's high school graduation approached, the Ellington household was a flurry of activity. College applications had been sent out, the Foundation was planning a major expansion, and there was a palpable sense of change in the air. One sunny Saturday, as Sam was helping Elizabeth in the garden, a tradition they had maintained over the years, she noticed him seemed distracted. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" she asked, pausing in her pruning. Sam sighed, setting down his trowel. "I got an offer from a volunteer program in South America. They want me to spend a year helping to set up education programs in underprivileged communities." Elizabeth's eyebrows rose. "That sounds like an amazing opportunity, Sam. But what about college?" "That's the thing," Sam said, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not sure I'm ready for college yet. I feel like I need to see more of the world first, to really understand the kind of impact I want to make." Elizabeth was quiet for a moment, her eyes on the blooming roses they had nurtured together over the years. Finally, she spoke. "You know, when Robert first brought you home, I was terrified of change. But you taught me that change can be beautiful, that it can help us grow in ways we never imagined." She reached out, taking Sam's hand in hers. "If this is what you feel you need to do, then you should do it. Your father and I, all of us, will support you." That evening, over a family dinner that included Amanda, Sam shared his decision. The reactions were mixed. Robert was concerned about safety. Amanda worried about Sam delaying his education, but underlying all their concerns was a deep pride in the young man Sam had become and the choices he was making. As the weeks passed and preparations for Sam's journey began, the Ellington household was a whirlwind of activity. Robert used his connections to ensure Sam would be as safe as possible during his year abroad. Elizabeth threw herself into researching the communities Sam would be working with, determined to understand this new chapter in her son's life. Amanda, drawing on her social work experience, helped Sam prepare for the emotional challenges he might face. The night before Sam's departure, the family gathered in the library, the room where so much of Sam's journey with the Ellingtons had begun. Robert raised a glass in a toast. "To Sam," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "who came into our lives unexpectedly and has brought us more joy than we could have ever imagined. We are so proud of the man you've become and the difference you're going to make in the world." As they all clinked glasses, Sam looked around at his family, Robert and Elizabeth, who had taken a chance on a boy in their garden and given him a home. Amanda, who had found the courage to reconnect and build a new kind of relationship, and even Charles, who, after years of therapy and reconciliation, had become a cautious but present part of their extended family. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," Sam said, his eyes shining. "You all taught me what family really means and showed me that love can take many forms. I promise to carry those lessons with me wherever I go." Chapter 13. Full Circle. 1 year later, the gardens of Ellington Manor were once again in full bloom. Elizabeth sat in her wheelchair by the rose bushes, a book forgotten in her lap as she gazed at the gate, waiting. The sound of a car approaching sent a flutter of excitement through her. Moments later, the gate swung open, and a tall young man with a backpack slung over his shoulder walked in. Sam, tanned and with a new air of confidence, broke into a run when he saw Elizabeth. "Mom?" he called out, enveloping her in a hug that nearly lifted her from her chair. "Oh, my boy," Elizabeth said, tears in her eyes. "Welcome home." As they made their way inside, Sam was greeted by Robert and Amanda, both of whom had been anxiously awaiting his return. The family settled in the library, eager to hear about Sam's experiences. Sam's eyes shone as he recounted tales of the communities he'd worked with, the children he'd taught, and the perspectives he'd gained. "It was challenging," he admitted. "There were times I felt overwhelmed, times I wasn't sure I was making a difference. But then I'd remember what you all taught me, about perseverance, about the power of kindness, about believing in oneself and others." As Sam spoke, Robert and Elizabeth exchanged proud glances. The boy they had taken in all those years ago had grown into a compassionate, thoughtful young man, ready to make his mark on the world. "So," Amanda asked, leaning forward, "what's next? Are you thinking about college now?" Sam nodded, a determined look in his eye. "Yes, but not in the way we originally planned. I want to study international development and social entrepreneurship. I want to take what I've learned from the foundation and my time abroad and expand on it." Robert beamed. "That sounds wonderful, son. And you know we'll support you every step of the way." As the evening wore on, the conversation turned to the future of the Ellington Foundation. Sam shared ideas for new programs, for expanding their reach globally. Elizabeth and Amanda chimed in with their own insights, while Robert listened, a contented smile on his face. Later that night, as the household settled into sleep, Sam found himself wandering into the garden. He made his way to the spot where Robert had found him all those years ago, a scared, hungry boy with no hope for the future. As he stood there under the stars, Sam felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. He thought of all the twists and turns his life had taken, of the family that had chosen him and the love that had transformed him. A soft sound made him turn. Robert was there, making his way down the garden path. "Couldn't sleep?" Robert asked, coming to stand beside Sam. Sam shook his head. "Just remembering. Thinking about how different my life could have been if you hadn't found me that night." Robert put an arm around Sam's shoulders. "I think perhaps we found each other. You changed our lives just as much as we changed yours." As they stood there, father and son, the first light of dawn began to paint the sky. It was a new day, full of promise and possibility. Sam knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the strength, love, and support of his extraordinary family. From the boy in the garden to the young man ready to make his mark on the world, Sam's journey had come full circle. And yet, in many ways, it was just beginning. As the sun rose over Ellington Manor, it illuminated not just a house but a home, a testament to the transformative power of love, second chances, and the true meaning of family. 10 years had passed since Sam's return from his volunteering experience abroad. Ellington Manor, once a symbol of isolated wealth, had transformed into a bustling center of philanthropy and social change. The gardens, still lovingly tended by Elizabeth and Sam during his visits home, now hosted regular community events and educational programs for underprivileged children. Sam, now in his late 20s, had become a respected figure in the world of international development. His unique perspective, shaped by his own journey from a homeless child to a privileged son, and finally to a global changemaker, made him a powerful advocate for children in need around the world. On a warm summer evening, the Ellington family gathered for a special celebration. The foundation was marking its 15th anniversary, and the occasion called for reflection on how far they had all come. Robert, his hair now more silver than brown, stood at the podium in the grand ballroom, addressing a crowd of supporters, beneficiaries, and friends. "When we started this foundation," he began, his voice strong despite his advancing years, "we thought we were embarking on a journey to change the lives of others. What we didn't realize was how profoundly it would change us." He gestured to where Elizabeth sat in her wheelchair, her face lined with age but her eyes as bright and determined as ever. "My wife Elizabeth taught us all the power of opening our hearts, even when it's scary. Her journey from reluctance to wholehearted embrace of our expanded family has been the backbone of everything we've achieved." Next, he nodded towards Amanda, who stood nearby with her new husband. Amanda showed us the courage it takes to right past wrongs and the beauty that can come from second chances. Finally, his gaze landed on Sam, who stood tall and proud beside his fiancée, Emily Hawthorne. "And Sam, the boy we found in our garden all those years ago, you, my son, have been our greatest teacher. You've shown us the resilience of the human spirit, the transformative power of love, and the incredible impact one person can have when they're given a chance." As Robert spoke, Sam felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He thought of all the lives they'd touched through the foundation, the children who'd received educations, the families who'd been given fresh starts, the communities that had been uplifted. And it had all started with one act of kindness on a cold night years ago. After the speeches and toasts, as the celebration continued around them, the core Ellington family, Robert, Elizabeth, Sam, and Amanda, found a quiet moment together in the library. This room, which had witnessed so many pivotal moments in their journey, felt like the perfect place for reflection. "I've been thinking," Sam said, his voice soft with emotion, "about starting a new initiative through the foundation, a program specifically designed to support unconventional families like ours, to show that family isn't just about blood, it's about love and choice and commitment." Elizabeth reached out to squeeze Sam's hand. "That's a wonderful idea, darling. Our story could give hope to so many others." Robert nodded in agreement. "We've always said that our greatest legacy wouldn't be wealth or status, but the love we've shared and the lives we've touched. This would be a beautiful way to continue that legacy." Amanda, who had become an integral part of the foundation's work over the years, chimed in. "I could help develop the program. Use my social work background to ensure we're really meeting the needs of diverse families." As they discussed the possibilities, their excitement growing, they were joined by Emily. She listened to their plans with a smile, then said, "You know, this is why I fell in love with this family. You're always looking for ways to spread more love in the world." Sam pulled her close, planting a kiss on her forehead. "Well, you're part of this family now too. What do you think? Ready to help us change the world again?" Emily's answer was a resounding yes, and as the night wore on, the plans for the new initiative took shape. They would call it the Garden of Second Chances, a nod to where their own journey had begun. As the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Sam found himself once again drawn to the garden. He stood in the spot where Robert had found him all those years ago, marveling at the twists and turns his life had taken. He felt a presence beside him and turned to see Robert approaching, moving a bit slower now, but still with that same warmth in his eyes. "Quite a night, eh?" Robert said, joining Sam in gazing out over the moonlit garden. Sam nodded. "I was just thinking about how different everything could have been. If you hadn't found me that night, if you and Mom hadn't taken a chance on me." Robert put his arm around Sam's shoulders. "You know, son, I've come to believe that some things are meant to be, not in a way that absolves us of responsibility, but in a way that challenges us to rise to the occasions life presents us with." That night, we were given an opportunity to open our hearts, to redefine what family means, and look at all the good that's come from that one decision. Sam leaned into his father's embrace. I hope that I can do the same for others, that I can offer the kind of love and support you and Mom gave me." "You already are, Sam," Robert assured him. "Every day through your work, through the way you live your life, you're passing on that legacy of love, and it will continue through your children and their children after them." As they stood there, the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon. It was a new day, full of promise and possibility. Sam thought about the journey ahead, his upcoming wedding to Emily, their plans to adopt the new initiative for the foundation. He felt a sense of excitement, but also a deep peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he had the strength to face them, buoyed by the love of his extraordinary family. From the boy in the garden to the man ready to build gardens of hope for others, Sam's story had come full circle. And yet, in many ways, it was just beginning. As the sun rose over Ellington Manor, it illuminated not just a house, but a home, a testament to the transformative power of love, second chances, and the true meaning of family. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the garden and the warmth of the rising sun, Sam made a silent promise. He would continue to nurture the seeds of love and hope that had been planted in him, ensuring that the legacy of the Ellingtons, a legacy of compassion, acceptance, and the boundless potential of the human heart, would continue to bloom for generations to come.